She takes more time falling in love, not because she lacks feeling, but because she feels deeply. In a world that celebrates instant sparks and rushed attachments, her slowness is often misunderstood. People assume hesitation means fear or that patience means uncertainty, but what they don't see is that her heart is not asleep, it is alert. She has learned that love is not something to stumble into blindly. It is something to walk toward with awareness. She does not rush because she understands that love, once entered, reshapes the inner world, and she respects that power. She understands that attraction is fast, but love is built over time, and this understanding did not come from theory, it came from lived awareness. Attraction announces itself loudly. It arrives with urgency, excitement, and a sense of emotional acceleration. It makes the heart race and the mind imagine futures before the present has even settled. She has felt this before. Most people have. That immediate pull, that sense of this feels right, can be intoxicating. But she has learned that attraction is a reaction, not a foundation. It is the psyche responding to novelty, familiarity, desire, or unmet needs, often all at once. Love, on the other hand, is something entirely different. Love is not a moment. It is a process that unfolds slowly, revealing truth layer by layer. She has noticed how attraction thrives in imagination. In the early stages, the mind fills in gaps with hope, fantasy, and projection. We don't see the person as they are. We see them as a symbol of what we long for. Psychology has long shown that during infatuation, the brain releases chemicals that heighten pleasure while dulling discernment. Judgment softens, red flags appear muted, everything feels possible. She does not deny this experience, nor does she judge it. She simply no longer confuses it with love. She knows that what begins in chemistry must eventually pass through reality, and reality takes time to reveal itself. So she slows down, not to suppress feeling, but to understand it. She allows attraction to exist without immediately acting on it. She watches how it behaves when it is not fed by constant reassurance or romantic fantasy. Does it deepen into respect? Does it mature into care? Or does it demand intensity to survive? She has learned that love does not need to be chased. It grows when it is nourished by consistency. Attraction wants immediacy. Love wants presence. This distinction has changed the way she opens her heart. She has also learned that time exposes patterns that emotion alone cannot detect. Anyone can be charming for a short while. Anyone can say the right words when they want to be desired. But time reveals how someone behaves when they are tired, frustrated, unpraised, or misunderstood. Love is not proven in moments of excitement. It is revealed in moments of neutrality. She pays attention to whether someone shows up the same way when there is nothing to gain. Attraction often disappears when effort is required. Love does not. This is why she waits, not because she doubts connection, but because she respects it. There was a time when she believed that strong feelings were enough, that if something felt powerful, it must be meaningful. But life taught her otherwise. She saw connections that burned bright and collapsed quickly. She saw people confuse urgency with destiny and intensity with depth. Perhaps she even lived through this herself, loving someone deeply before truly knowing them, attaching before understanding, trusting before observing. Those experiences left an imprint, not of fear, but of wisdom. She realized that love entered too quickly often asks a heavy price later, and she decided that her heart deserved patience, not impulsiveness. She also understands that love must grow in safety to survive. Attraction can exist in chaos, love cannot. Love requires emotional stability, mutual respect, and the slow development of trust. Trust is not created by promises, it is built by repetition, by showing up again and again in small, ordinary ways. She looks for alignment between words and actions because she knows the nervous system recognizes truth long before the mind does. If something feels constantly uncertain, if clarity is always postponed, she does not call it passion anymore, she calls it information. This awareness has made her calmer, not colder. She feels deeply, but she does not surrender blindly. She allows space for curiosity instead of urgency. She lets silence speak. She listens not only to what is said, but to what is avoided. This takes time, and she is willing to give it, because love that grows slowly has room to root itself. It does not rely on fantasy to survive. It is grounded in reality, and reality is where lasting connection lives. She also knows that love is not meant to rescue her from herself. In the past, attraction sometimes carried the promise of escape, from loneliness, from uncertainty, from inner conflict. But she has faced herself now. She has spent time alone, reflecting, integrating parts of herself that once sought completion through another. Because of this, she no longer rushes toward anyone who makes her feel alive. She asks instead, do I feel more myself here, or less? Attraction can make you feel alive for a moment. Love allows you to remain whole over time. Taking more time falling in love is her way of honoring depth. She understands that love is not proven by speed but by endurance. It is not validated by intensity but by steadiness. She is not waiting for perfection, she is waiting for truth. And truth does not rush. It reveals itself gradually, honestly, and without force. When love finally begins to form within her, it does not feel overwhelming, it feels grounded. There is no confusion about where she stands, no constant need for reassurance. There is clarity, mutual effort, and a sense of emotional safety. Attraction may have opened the door, but time built the room, and in that space, love does not need to perform. It simply exists, strong enough to last because it was allowed to grow. Past experiences taught her that rushing leads to emotional loss, and this lesson was not learned gently. It arrived through moments that once felt hopeful and later felt heavy, through conversations that started with excitement and ended in silence, through promises that sounded sincere in the beginning but weakened under the weight of time. She did not become cautious overnight, she became aware. Each rushed connection left behind a quiet understanding that the heart, when opened too quickly, often pays a price it did not anticipate. She remembers how easy it was to believe in words before actions had time to confirm them. When everything is new, people show their best selves. They say what feels right in the moment, not always what they are able to sustain. She learned that early intensity can create the illusion of depth. It feels meaningful because it is fast, because it feels rare, because it seems urgent. But urgency, she realized, often hides instability. What rushes in usually has not learned how to stay. There were times when she attached to potential rather than reality. She fell in love with who someone could be, not who they consistently. She filled in the missing pieces with hope, patience, and emotional labor, believing that love meant endurance. Over time, she saw how much energy was spent maintaining a connection that was never truly mutual. Emotional loss does not always come from betrayal. Sometimes it comes from slowly realizing that you gave more than you received, that you invested in something that was never growing in the same direction. Rushing taught her to ignore her intuition. When things move quickly, there is little space to listen to inner signals. Doubts are dismissed as fear. Discomfort is labeled overthinking. Boundaries are softened in the name of connection. She remembers moments when her body felt uneasy, but her heart insisted on pushing forward. Only later did she understand that intuition does not shout, it whispers. And when you rush, you cannot hear it. Emotional loss often begins the moment we silence ourselves to keep someone else. She also learned that rushing creates attachment before understanding. Once emotional bonds form, clarity becomes harder. We protect what we are attached to even when it hurts us. She stayed longer than she should have because she had already invested emotionally. She explained away behavior that should have been questioned. She accepted inconsistency because letting go felt like failure. Time taught her that attachment without knowledge is dangerous. Love should deepen understanding, not replace it. What hurt her most was not always the ending, but the realization that she abandoned herself along the way. Rushing required her to adapt too quickly, to adjust her needs, to make room for uncertainty. She learned that emotional loss is not just about losing another person, it is about losing alignment with yourself. The grief was not only for the relationship, but for the version of herself who believed love had to be proven through sacrifice. With reflection came insight. She noticed how different it felt when something unfolded slowly, when conversations deepened naturally instead of escalating rapidly, when trust formed through shared experiences, not promises. She saw how time filters intention. Those who are only seeking validation move on when excitement fades. Those who are capable of real connection remain present. Rushing, she realized, benefits those who want intensity without responsibility. She began to understand the psychology behind it. The human mind craves certainty and connection, especially after loneliness or emotional deprivation. Rushing feels like relief. It feels like safety, but often it is only a temporary escape from discomfort. She learned to sit with uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it through attachment. This was not easy. Slowness requires emotional strength. It requires trusting that what is meant to stay will not be lost by patience. Now, she moves differently. She allows relationships to reveal themselves without force. She observes consistency rather than clinging to moments. She understands that time is not the enemy of love. It is its protector. If something is real, it will not disappear because she took her time. If it demands speed, it is often because it cannot survive depth. Her past did not harden her, it refined her. Emotional loss became a teacher rather than a wound. She no longer rushes to be chosen or to choose. She allows herself to remain whole while connection grows. She knows that love should add to her life, not consume it. And if waiting means avoiding another cycle of emotional depletion, she's willing to wait. Rushing once made her feel alive, but it also left her empty. Now, she understands that what grows slowly grows strong. What is built with awareness endures, and what is entered with patience is far less likely to leave her with loss because it was never based on illusion, it was built on truth. She values emotional safety more than emotional excitement, and this choice was not always natural to her. At one time, excitement felt like proof. The rush of uncertainty, the intensity of longing, the pull of unpredictability, all of it felt alive, almost sacred. When emotions were heightened, she believed something meaningful was happening. But over time, she began to notice the cost, the nights of overthinking, the constant need for reassurance, the way her mood depended on someone else's attention. What once felt thrilling slowly revealed itself as exhausting. And in that exhaustion, a deeper understanding began to form. She realized that emotional excitement often speaks to unresolved parts of the self. It awakens old patterns, familiar wounds, and unmet needs. The mind mistakes stimulation for connection, intensity for intimacy. She had been drawn to people who kept her guessing, not because they were profound, but because they activated something unfinished inside her. The push and pull felt like passion, but it was really tension. And tension, she learned, cannot be sustained without damage. Emotional safety, by contrast, arrived quietly. It did not announce itself with fireworks or dramatic gestures. It showed up in small, consistent ways. In conversations where she did not feel judged. In moments where silence did not feel threatening. In disagreements that did not become emotional battlegrounds. At first, this calm felt unfamiliar. She even questioned it. Was something missing? Was it too easy? But slowly, she noticed how her body responded. Her breath softened. Her thoughts slowed. She slept better. Her nervous system, long accustomed to alertness, finally found rest. She began to understand that the body recognizes safety before the mind understands it. Emotional excitement keeps the nervous system activated, constantly anticipating the next high or low. Emotional safety allows it to settle. Psychology shows that secure attachment is often experienced as calm rather than intense. But for those who have lived in emotional chaos, calm can feel empty at first. She had to really learn what love was supposed to feel like. Not a storm to survive, but a place to return to. She reflected on how often excitement demanded performance. When relationships were driven by emotional highs, she felt pressure to be interesting, desirable, or endlessly understanding. She was always adjusting, always sensing shifts, always trying to maintain connection. Emotional safety required none of that. She could be tired and still be valued. She could disagree and still be respected. She could be quiet and still be chosen. This consistency taught her something profound. Love does not require constant proving. There were moments when she missed the adrenaline, the unpredictability that once made her feel special, but she remembered what followed those highs, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the emotional instability. Excitement came with conditions. Safety came with acceptance. She began to see that excitement often depends on uncertainty, while safety grows from reliability. One feels intoxicating, the other feels nourishing. And nourishment, she learned, is what sustains. She also noticed how emotional safety allowed her to remain herself. In exciting but unstable connections, parts of her were always on guard. She edited her words, minimized her needs, and tolerated confusion in the name of connection. Safety did the opposite. It invited her to be honest, to express needs without fear of abandonment, to trust that her feelings would not be used against her. In that space, her confidence grew, not because she was constantly desired, but because she was consistently respected. This shift did not make her less passionate, it made her more present. Emotional safety did not dull her feelings, it clarified them. Without the noise of anxiety, she could actually hear her heart. Love felt steady, not stagnant. Warm, not overwhelming. She realized that excitement fades quickly, but safety deepens over time. What begins calmly can grow rich and meaningful. What begins chaotically often burns out. She began choosing relationships that felt emotionally predictable in the best way, not boring but stable, not dramatic but sincere. She learned that trust is built when actions align with words, when care is consistent, and when presence does not disappear under stress. Emotional safety allowed love to become a shared experience rather than a personal struggle. Now, she listens to how she feels after interactions, not just during them. Does she feel grounded or drained, clear or confused, safe or unsettled? These questions guide her more than chemistry ever did. She understands that emotional excitement can be addictive, but addiction is not love. Love, she knows now, should feel like peace expanding, not tension tightening. Choosing emotional safety was an act of courage. It meant letting go of familiar chaos and trusting something quieter. It meant redefining what love looks like and allowing herself to receive it in a healthier form. And in doing so, she discovered that the deepest connections are not the ones that shake you, but the ones that hold you. She has a strong sense of self and refuses to lose it for love, not because she is rigid or unwilling to compromise, but because she has already learned what it costs to disappear. There was a time when love felt like merging, like dissolving into another person so completely that her own edges blurred. At first, it felt beautiful. Being needed felt meaningful. Adjusting felt generous. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to drift away from herself. Her preferences softened. Her boundaries became flexible. Her voice grew quieter. And one day she realized she had been loving someone else at the expense of her own presence. That realization was painful, but it was also clarifying. She understood then that love should not require self-erasure. True connection does not demand the abandonment of identity. Yet many people, especially those who love deeply, mistake sacrifice for devotion. She did too. She believed that understanding meant enduring, that patience meant tolerating discomfort, that love meant making herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. It took time to see how unhealthy that pattern was, and even more time to unlearn it. Developing a strong sense of self did not happen all at once. It was built through solitude, reflection, and honest self-examination. She spent time alone, not to isolate herself, but to understand who she was without an audience. He learned what energized her and what drained her. She discovered her values, her limits, her emotional needs. In that process, she realized how often she had shaped herself around others instead of allowing relationships to meet her where she already stood. This inner clarity changed the way she approached love. She no longer entered connections hoping to be defined by them. She knew who she was before anyone arrived, and she intended to remain that person afterward. This did not make her less loving, it made her more grounded. She could now offer companionship without dependency, intimacy without fusion. She stopped seeking validation through another's approval because she had learned how to give it to herself. She became aware of how easily love can turn into self-betrayal when boundaries are unclear. Without a strong sense of self, every disagreement feels like a threat. Every difference feels like distance. She had lived that reality before, constantly adjusting to maintain harmony, constantly fearing loss if she expressed her truth. Now, she understood that the ability to disagree without losing connection is a sign of emotional maturity. Love that requires silence is not love, it is control disguised as closeness. Refusing to lose herself for love also meant accepting that not every connection would last. Some people are drawn to those who bend, not to those who stand firm. When she began to show up fully as herself, she noticed that certain dynamics no longer work. And instead of shrinking to preserve them, she let them go. This was not an act of coldness but of respect, for herself and for the truth. Love that asks you to abandon yourself is not asking for love, it is asking for submission. She learned to recognize the subtle signs of self-loss early on, when she felt the urge to over-explain her needs, when she hesitated to express discomfort, when she started prioritizing someone else's emotional state over her own inner voice. These moments became signals, not reasons for shame. They reminded her to pause, to return to herself, to re-anchor before attachment deepened. Self-awareness became her safeguard. Holding on to her sense of self also allowed her to love more freely. Without the fear of losing herself, she could give without resentment. She could support without self-neglect. She could choose love not as a necessity but as a desire. This shifted the energy of her relationships. She was no longer seeking completion, she was offering connection. And that difference changed everything. She discovered that love is not about becoming one, but about standing as two whole individuals choosing to walk together. When both people have a strong sense of self, love becomes a space of mutual respect rather than emotional consumption. Growth is encouraged, not threatened. Differences are explored, not erased. She no longer feared being alone because she was no longer alone with herself. Refusing to lose herself for love was not a rejection of intimacy, it was a deeper commitment to it. She knew that any love worth having would honor her individuality, not compete with it. And in protecting her sense of self, she was not closing her heart. She was ensuring that when she gave it, she could give it fully, without disappearing in the process. She loves deeply, and depth requires intention and responsibility. This is the truth that governs how she gives her heart. Her love is not casual, not impulsive, and not offered to fill empty space. It is deliberate, shaped by awareness of what love does to the inner world once it takes root. She understands that to love deeply is to affect another person's life, just as profoundly as they affect yours. And because she understands that weight, she does not love recklessly. There was a time when she believed love was something that simply happened, like a force that overtook you without consent. But experience taught her otherwise. Love may begin unconsciously, but sustaining it is a choice made repeatedly. Depth does not come from intensity alone. It comes from consistency, accountability, and emotional presence. She learned that when love is given without intention, it often becomes confusing. When it is given without responsibility, it can become destructive. So she slowed down, not to withhold love, but to offer it with care. She knows that loving deeply means being willing to be seen fully, not just admired, but known. This kind of vulnerability requires safety, trust, and emotional maturity on both sides. She does not open herself to just anyone because she knows how much of herself becomes involved once she does. Her thoughts, her energy, her future, all are quietly shaped by where she places her love. Depth binds. It creates attachment. And attachment, if mishandled, can wound deeply. Responsibility to her means understanding the impact of her presence. She is mindful of how her words linger, how her absence is felt, how her affection shapes expectations. She does not promise what she cannot maintain. She does not create emotional dependence and then withdraw. She has seen the damage caused by people who love intensely but inconsistently, who give affection in waves, who confuse passion with commitment. She refuses to be that person. If she chooses to love, she chooses to be steady. She also knows that deep love requires emotional regulation. Loving deeply does not mean reacting impulsively to every feeling. It means holding space for discomfort without turning it into harm. It means communicating rather than disappearing, reflecting rather than projecting. She understands that unresolved inner conflicts can easily spill into intimate connections. So she takes responsibility for her inner world. She does not expect another to carry her unhealed wounds. She works through them so they do not become weapons or burdens. Depth also demands patience. Love that is deep grows slowly because it is built on understanding rather than illusion. She takes time to learn how someone thinks, how they handle stress, how they love when it is inconvenient. She pays attention to how conflict is navigated, not avoided. Because responsibility in love means choosing someone not just for who they are when things are easy, but for how they show up when things are difficult. She is aware that deep love transforms identity. It alters priorities, habits, and emotional rhythms. When she loves, she integrates another person into her inner life. That integration must be done consciously. Without intention, love can swallow individuality or create imbalance. She has seen relationships where one person gives deeply while the other remains distant, where devotion becomes one-sided. She refuses that dynamic. Depth, for her, must be mutual. Responsibility means ensuring that love flows both ways, not drains one person dry. She understands that loving deeply also means knowing when not to love. Not every connection deserves that level of investment. Some people want the comfort of depth without the responsibility it demands. They want closeness without accountability, intimacy without consistency. She does not offer herself to those dynamics. Saying no, for her, is not cruelty. It is discernment. She protects her depth because she knows how rare and powerful it is. When she loves with presence. She listens beyond words. She notices emotional shifts. She responds rather than reacts. This does not mean she is perfect. It means she is intentional. She is willing to reflect on her behavior, to apologize, to grow. Responsibility in love means recognizing that impact matters more than intention. She does not hide behind excuses when she causes pain. She faces it, learns from it, and adjusts. Her depth is not loud. It does not perform for attention. It is quiet, consistent, and enduring. It shows up in reliability, in honesty, in emotional availability. She understands that true intimacy is not built through grand gestures, but through small moments of trust repeated over time. Loving deeply is not about overwhelming someone with feeling. It is about creating a space where both people can be fully themselves. Because she loves deeply, she chooses carefully. Because depth requires responsibility, she does not offer it lightly. And when she finally does, her love is not something that consumes. It is something that supports, stabilizes, and strengthens. It is love that knows its power and respects it enough to handle it with care. So if she takes more time falling in love, do not try to rush her heart. Do not mistake patience for indifference. She is not slow. She is intentional. In a world addicted to speed, she has chosen depth. And the love that grows slowly is often the love that knows how to endure. Because what takes time to enter, the heart tends to stay there the longest.